So preview, view, review, she's right, it's a technique in which the teacher takes a few minutes prior to teaching a lesson and a few minutes following the lesson to have a brief discussion with the students to activate prior knowledge and to summarize key concepts for the topic to be taught or read. The majority of the instructional time is still in the target language, but you build a space for preview and review in the student's dominant language. So a few minutes in dominant language at the beginning and at the end of the lesson have been shown to increase student learning by allowing students to activate schema and solidify essential concepts. That is one big reason why we do it. In each part of the structure, the teacher adheres to the main language of the part of the structure. So if you're doing preview, view, review, and the target language is, let's say, English, that's the view, that's the target language. The preview is in Spanish and the review is in Spanish, right? But you, the teacher, during that structure, you're the model of Spanish, then the model of English, then the model of Spanish. You stay in the language of the structure. If the target language is Spanish, the preview and the review is in English. Red to illustrate Spanish, blue to illustrate English. If the target language is English, then the preview and review is in Spanish. So what kinds of things can we do in a preview? If I had chosen the little book in English as my target language, my view. In the preview, using this book in Spanish for a few minutes prior to the lesson, I could do a read aloud of sections of this book. I could go to a specific chapter and discuss that piece with the students in their native language. We could do a picture walk. We could look at text features. We could look at pictures. We can discuss it because I know that in this case, this book is related to the other book in terms of the concept of adaptations. And I'm using this one for what? To build schema, background. And how long did it take? Right? You know your purpose. You're going to do it for a few minutes to build background into the other language. The view becomes your guided reading lesson. In your small group instruction for guided reading, you do your before, your during, your after, your view part of it, because it's in the second language for many of the students in the room. It's sheltered. Right? That one has to be linguistically supported as well. But you, in this case, you would do your before, your during, and your after, your word study, your writing, all the pieces that you would do during your balanced literacy lesson in that other target language. When you go to the review, it has two purposes. The first purpose is to clarify misconceptions. Now, we previewed in Spanish. The majority of the lesson was in what language? In English. But then that little translanguaging space allows us to come back and do a small review, right? And in that review, we would clarify for misconceptions. We want to know that maybe in spite of the language, that the students understood the concept. The next part of the review, in that space, you could do a little bit of cross-language connections. You could do it as that part of the review. It depends on your program and your program design. I think sometimes we do a lot of cross-language connections at the morphology cognate level. So important, right? That's like our number one, and we do it a lot because it has high leverage in terms of kids making meaning and students also developing biliteracy. But we cannot forget that there are other connections that we can make with students at the phonology level, right? The sound systems, syntax and grammar, rules for punctuation, similarities and differences. Conjugations of verbs in Spanish reduces the need for the pronoun. Instead of I am going, voy. Those are really powerful instructional points that we can share with our student when we're doing those cross-language connections. And also language use. Figurative language is really hard when you're learning in the second language. So we have to kind of look at our text, and when we find figurative language, that is really important for us to talk through that, because it would impact meaning and it impacts comprehension. So while it is important that we do cognates, we have to make sure that we also push ourselves to work at all the other levels where we could be doing linguistic connections.